Shalom, first and foremost, I want to give all honor, glory, and praise to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakak Kodash. Double honor to the elders of Great Millstone, and peace and salutations to the brothers that are doing this work in truth and sincerity. And we're going to jump right into the lesson, and we're going to start at verse Romans 12 and 3. This is the subtitle for this part of the scriptures is Romans 12 and 3, gifts of grace. It says, "For I say, through the grace that is given unto me, to every man that is among you, not to think himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think soberly, according as Yahweh has dealt to every man the measure of faith." So you're not supposed to think highly of yourself or hold yourself in a higher regard uh, against another brother, because the question of rank was brought up by the ISPK member that went to the elders up in the Dallas camp. You know, he kept on questioning, what's your rank? What's your rank? What's your rank? You know, referring to what they called the General Johanna, if I'm not mistaken. And that's a man given rank. That man thinks that he is higher than he thinks he is. It says the scripture says not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think soberly according as Yahweh has dealt to every man the measure of faith. So, you know, there is rank, there is offices, there is camp leaders and officers and so on and so forth in this truth. But that's not for the putting yourself of one man over the other. That's just basically to keep order. It's not to lord over men. It's not to swell your head up or think yourself of a special, that you have a special hell, you have a special discernment, or you have a higher calling than the other brother. Because the scripture says, it says, but to think soberly as Yahweh has dealt to every man the measure of faith. Now, you know, you can have a new brother in the camp, and his measure of faith, it might start off very low, but it'll increase to miraculous, miraculous levels. You know, and there'll be another brother that, he believes in the word, he does the work, saying, he's doing it. And the Lord has given him that measure of faith. It says in verse 4, for as we have many members in one body, all not members have the same office. You can't have everybody doing the same thing. There's that saying, too many chiefs, not enough Indians. The rank and structure is there to help one another. It's there to encourage the traits of integrity, encourage the traits of expectation, to set a standard, to give an example, to teach, to edify, to build up. You have men that have more life experience than others, and they know about certain things than a younger man does. You can have a younger man that has more life experience than an older man, because maybe he had a harsher life, or maybe his path, was, it gone through a lot of different things. But end of the day, the Lord puts every man in his position as he is called. It says, for we have many members in one body, and all members have not the same office. So, we're all here to complement one another. We're all here to be assets to one another, to be resources to one another. Not to look down upon, not to, I can't wait to get on that brother type deal. not to be critics of one another, not to just be like that, man. That's not what it's about. Scripture says you got to be long suffering with brothers. Now, if you have a mentality where you think you're better than somebody, you think that you think you're somewhere highly than you ought to think because you hold a certain rank, like they were saying. Then how is that going to help? How is that going to encourage the younger member or the newer member? How's that going to edify? Every man goes through his own thing and his truth, man. It says, so we being many are one body in Mashiach, and every one members of one another. So all those different offices, they make up one body. They make up a functioning, you could say like a Voltron for brothers that are older. Well, they had a cartoon name called Voltron, where you had these different robots, or I guess you can call them spaceships that look like lions. And when they wanted to basically maximize their power, they all formed together. One was the leg, one was the arm, one was the what do you call it? One was the body, one was the it completed. It made a body. Let me see if I can find a reference for that real quick. There's a Voltron. You see the arms and the legs. There were different chips or vehicles, and the body was its own vehicle as well. And when they wanted to be at the very maximum level, they all formed Voltron. They became one body. They all had different functions. They all had different attributes. But to function on the maximum power, they became Voltron. They formed together and became Voltron. That's just a little example. But let's go back to the lesson. It says, so we be many are one body, Mashiach, and every member is one another, having then gifts differing according to the grace that is given to us. So there's different talents and special abilities that men have in this truth. One brother have like I said, one brother could have that. He's good at like figuring certain things out or looking at things a certain way. He got his own little angle on things, man. He knows how to read people. You can have a brother that's good in finances. He helps brothers with their finances. You have other brother that's good at something else, man. Or one brother that likes to get into the history. Another brother likes to get into breakdowns. Another brother likes to he just likes to exhort, hype other brothers up. Yeah, one brother, that's just there as an example to other brothers. So you gotta look at every man's different abilities, and when you see a man having an ability, encourage that ability. So everything gives different according to the grace that is given to us. Whether prophesy, let us prophecy, let us prophesy, according to the proportion of faith. Or ministry, let us wait on the ministry, or he that teaches on teaching. And when you recognize and realize you have a certain ability, it's your responsibility to foster that, to grow that. It's your responsibility to execute that for the benefit of the body. And so he that exhorteth on exhortation, he that giveth that do it with simplicity, he that ruleth with diligence, he that showeth mercy with cheerfulness. That's basically the body. That's not. And if you look at it, it doesn't speak about ranking or being lords over one another. Let's go ahead and get another scripture. So let's get 1 Peter 5:1. It said, the elders which are among you I exhort, I'm also an elder, and witness of the sufferings of Mashiach, and also partake of the glory that should be revealed. It says, feed the flock of Yahweh which is among you. So, if you're put in a position of leadership, over a group of brothers, It's basically one of your duties to foster and encourage spiritual growth, in the forms of edification, exhortation, the sharing of knowledge, and things of that nature. And that's something that, we all got to work on. It says, feed the flock of Yahweh which is among you, taking oversight thereof, not by constraint, but willingly, not for filthy lucre, but ready mind. So let's go ahead and get that in the NLT. And it says, don't lord over the people assigned to your care. It says, but lead them by your own good example. So if you're in a position of leadership, the most important thing that you need to provide for your men, and this is throughout all the military, and and where do you think they got the concepts of the military from? From the scriptures, from the men of the Lord. They read the scripture, talk about captains over 50 and so on and so forth, man. And that's where you get today's sergeants and officers and captains and privates and lance corporals and so on and so forth. It says, but lead them by your own good example. So, and basically, we should all be good examples to one another. And that's something that you gotta be aware of in your own. You gotta be aware of the example that you're giving out, and the actions that you take and the words that you say. And when the great shepherd appears, you will receive a crown of never-ending glory and honor. In the same way, you who are younger must accept the authority of the elders. And all of you, dress yourself in humility as you relate to one another. It says, for Yahweh will oppose the proud, but give his grace to the humble. So that's the key. So where's all the generals and the rank and all this that that young man was talking about, and he went to the elders of Dallas? Where was the humility? And he didn't come humble. He was questioning a man that knew more than him very proudly. What's your rank? Instead of being humble and trying to learn something, he became proud. But the scripture says Yahweh opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. So that individual, he just might be through. It says to humble yourselves in the mighty power of Yahweh, and at the right time he will lift you up in honor. So the Lord wants you in a certain position. He'll put you in that position. And we don't covet positions, man. In Great Millstone. We don't say, well, I don't know why that brother's that position. I should be in that position. It ain't like that, man. We understand that that's all through the Spirit. That's all. The Spirit reveals all that. The Spirit is the one that puts individuals and men in certain offices, so he can have the maximum influence among the brotherhood. And if that individual is not executing that office, there's many times in Scripture where the Lord placed men. Look at King Saul. He got replaced King David. That's just one example. There's many times Scripture say, okay, well, you ain't doing it. I'm gonna get someone else that's gonna do it. You got that in the military. You go to a Marine Corps boot camp. They pick certain recruits to be squad leaders and guides, and when they fail at their positions for whatever reason, they'll fire that individual and assign someone else in their place. And the Lord does the same thing, man. That's why you see camp leaders that are in certain positions and they're not there no more because they weren't executing the office that the Lord gave them correctly. So this is the way it's set up, man. It's not about rank. It is about rank, but it's not about rank. But it ain't about calling. It ain't about titles and generals or loading over or anything like that, man. It's all through the Spirit. It's all guided and directed by the Spirit. He said, give all your worries and cares to your heart, for He cares about you. Stay alert. Watch out for your great enemy. So if you're coveting position, questioning about rank, if you're not keeping it simple, man, That's what the elder Gabar always says. Keep it simple, stupid. You know, that's what it stands for, KSS. Keep it simple, stupid. That's you know, they say that in the military as well. Just keep your communication as simple as possible. So there's no question of understanding that communication. It says, give all your worries give all your worries and cares to Yahweh. If He cares about you, so the Lord's gonna take care of all that, man. Just stay alert, watch out for your great enemy, the devil. If you're concerned about these little petty little things, yeah, that's a link. That's what do you call it? A weak link in the chain. That's vulnerable to attack, and that's where the enemy gets you. Stay alert, watch out for your great enemy, the devil. He prowls a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Now you look at lions; they go for the weakest of the pack. You know, so brothers, stay strong. Well, it says right there, stand firm against him and be strong in your faith. Stay strong. Remember that your family believers or the world is going through the same kind of suffering you are. So, and we all going through it, man. The Most High willing, the Lord allows us to endure this thing until the last day where we're being up on chariots. But this is a rundown on these scriptures, and it's all through the Spirit. You know, something I was thinking about. With that being said, Most High willing, it was an edifying lesson. Let's have give honor, glory, and praise to you, Yahweh Bashem Yoshai. Kahala Yahweh Bashem Yoshai. Brothers, keep on pushing. Shalom.